during the pandemic is when I learned about I think her name is Trisha Hersey.
Hmm.
She has a Instagram called the Nap Ministry.
Yes, I follow that mystery. Yep.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
remember when I first saw one of the posts, someone sent me whatever the words were on. I don't remember what the words said, but whatever it was right for me. And it was like, oh, that's a new way to think about it, right? Like it's a constant reminder that we've been taught that to slow down, that to rest is a laziness. And if we're trying to protect ourselves from the judgment of others, and we're trying to protect ourselves from the narrative of white supremacy in the world that says if you want to get ahead, you must work hard. And even though you've worked 15 hours already today, still not enough. It's not like there's like propaganda machines playing out in the street telling you this. It just gets ingrained in you by these subtle and powerful and influential ways. And if we're not careful, we adopt it. We adopt it. And I think that I have adopted some of those things. I've adopted a very much a self-hate kind of narrative that I can't be like this. And so therefore it means I gotta work more and more, which means I'm not resting, which means I'm not at the full best of myself at all times because I'm running on fumes, right? And I think that those are the things that constantly come up. And so when you said that, and I really appreciated that. And yeah, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I resonate with that. I think a lot of these messages about productivity and we get into things like white supremacy and capitalism and but just systems. I think all we're talking about are systems that maybe sometimes contribute to us not feeling like we're enough. I feel like it's such a miracle being a human being, like just trying to navigate this world and like I don't know. And we take that for granted, I think, so much, just surviving all of this in a society that isn't always designed to help us cope and heal. We have to find those locations. Like I get resentful when I hear, like, for example, I once was asked to come in and do education with a bunch of master's level students who are teachers in training. And they wanted me to come in and talk to them about being burnout culture. Like, how do you address being burnt out? And when I went in there and I kind of heard about their conditions and what it was like for them teaching and training right now during the pandemic, I said, you're putting so much blame on yourself for your burnout and what you need to do to not be burned out when it sounds like you're being exploited, right? Like it sounds like sometimes we're sitting here being exploited, like our emotions, our time, our energy. Sometimes we're being exploited, and maybe it's not, and maybe sometimes it is environmental. It's not always on us. And I think sometimes we live in a society that always says, well, what are you doing wrong? And it's not to say that you can't take personal accountability or responsibility, absolutely. But I think there's systems that also need to kind of take some of that accountability for how it contributes to this feeling. And so I encourage folks to maybe rest. But I also know I can judge that. I judge myself sometimes. I can judge others for not doing enough sometimes. And I have to recommit myself to like humanity sometimes. Be like, whoa, this isn't human to feel this sometimes. Like we need to rest. We need to connect differently, and not always be chasing some unattainable goal that feels really rigid. And the last thing I'll say about it, actually, with my job, a lot of my work in the past, I'm doing masculinity work, and I'm often maybe the only male or masculine aligned sort of person at a specific job. Right now in trauma work at Northwestern, I'm the only man that's doing this work at this particular department. I used to work in reproductive justice and rights, like where I was the a face, sort of doing work around that in education and outreach as the only man or male. And I think what I struggle a lot with, especially this year, is when I need a rest, when I need to slow down, when I need to address my own mental health, my own trauma, so much guilt comes up because then I'm taking the break. But like, here are maybe these women I work with, these femme identifying folks I work with, these women of color I work with who are doing this labor and who have been doing this and live it in a way that I don't. And then, oh, who am I to slow down? Who am I to tag out? But that's also like sort of almost this white supremacist sort of mentality for me, where I was like, no, actually, all of us should be able to take our time and our space to rest. And why, when they're resting, I'm tagged in. But then sometimes I'm going to need rest too. And maybe I'm tagging in Ashanti because he's been resting, and now he's back in. But we don't always have to be constantly tagged in and hyper vigilant. We need to have a different system for this. And so I think I've been challenging myself a lot about my own rigidity and my own guilt and my own shame that sometimes is centered around my masculinity and other parts of my identity.
Ooh. Well, I do this work around mask, but also, I'm an old school wrestling fan,
Same,
and I
same. Talk
and,
to me.
oh,
Talk to me.
and and when you talked about tagging me in,
Yep.
like you remember some of those matches and old school matches where when the partners weren't really that tight, and when you like tag me in, and you're like, I'm not tagging you in, so I tag myself in. Like I slap you on the back, and I'm like, get out, I'm coming in, and I wonder if how many people would benefit if they had people in their life like that, who's like, you know what, actually, I'm tagging you out because I'm gonna come in and help in this moment. Like I know you willing to do it by yourself. I know that you are telling yourself you have to do it by yourself. I know that you are like in the mindset that you have to do it all by yourself, but you don't. And so actually I'm tagging you out, right? And there may be a battle in that conversation. There may be a battle in a conversation where you're going to be upset with me that I'm going to tell you something that I believe is true and real, and you may not agree, and we don't have to agree, but I'm going to show you how much I care, that I'm not going to let you suffer at this by yourself,
Yeah. Yeah, I have tremendous love for I had a mentor in Kansas City named Dr. Lynette Sparkman Barnes who used to talk about rest and sort of like that as part of the resistance too. Like we got to chill a little bit, right? And you hear that from different spaces in our intersectional, feminist works and stuff. Just these things about resistance and rest and what goes into that and what comes out of rest, what can be born out of rest. And I think like sometimes I feel like I have so many ideas about like how I want to do this masculinity work in more innovative ways or just human ways, connected ways. But I'm so, sometimes feeling exploited or burnt out by like having to fight so many other battles when and put out so many fires and be so reactive as opposed to being really proactive and create, and I think sometimes it is because we're all just tagged in. It's like a battle royal, we're all in the ring at the same time, right? And when there's not enough space for all of us, we gotta like maybe some of us could be outside, and wait our turn, get in there, like it's stagger it. But how powerful it is to notice that in a colleague or in a friend or someone, just say like, hey, I got you right now, maybe you can rest a little bit, and give people that permission and model that permission, because I didn't always see good models of permission to slow down for my family, my parents. It was always grinding, but do we always have to do it this way? Maybe we can divest from that and do it a little differently.